Did you know the Conservative Party actually received the most votes of any party in the 2021 election, as they also did in 2019? So why did the Liberals win both those elections? It's all thanks to Canada's first past the post electoral system. The name calls to mind horse racing. The candidate who wins the most votes, you could say they passed the finish line first, is declared the winner of a given riding. Sounds simple enough, but in Canada's multi-party system, it means a candidate can win a riding even if a majority of ballots were cast for other candidates. It also means a party can win the most seats in Parliament even if they didn't secure the highest total number of votes. So while the Conservatives may have secured more total votes, they were in ridings they won overwhelmingly. The Liberals may have garnered less overall votes, but those votes came in key battleground ridings. With these results in mind, the question is once again being asked, is it time to change the way Canada holds elections? York University Associate Professor Dennis Pilon says first past the post isn't the best way to capture the true feelings of an electorate.
Our system fails at the most basic level. It fails to represent the diversity of opinion. It distorts the things that voters say with their votes. It actively interferes with voters getting what they want.
So what are the alternatives? Some supporters of electoral reform suggest changing the system to what's known as proportional representation. In this system, a party's seat count in Parliament would reflect their share of the overall vote count. So the nearly 33% the Liberals received in 2021 would give them about 112 seats, while the Conservatives would get 115. The NDP, which only received 25 seats, would instead get around 61, and the PPC would get 17 seats instead of none. Those in favor argue this form of voting is more democratic and can boost voter turnout. But proportional representation itself has different variations, one of which is called mixed member proportional. It's a system used by countries like Germany and New Zealand and was considered by British Columbia in 2018. Voters cast two ballots, one choosing a local candidate in their riding, decided by the first past the post winner-take-all system, and then one for the party they prefer. On election day, each party's candidates can win seats in local ridings, but the party can also gain MPs based on the percentage of the popular vote it receives from that second ballot. For example, if the Greens received 2% of the party vote, they would get about 7 seats. But if they only won 2 local ridings, the remaining 5 seats would go to candidates on a list published before election day. And with nearly 8% of the national popular vote, the Bloc Québécois could net as many as 27 seats under MMP. And yes, if a party doesn't win any ridings, they could still have MPs elected. Often this system still requires parties to get a minimum percentage of the vote or win a riding outright to still end up with MPs. But this means smaller parties have an easier path to election and therefore representation for their constituents. In some cases, this system could also mean either increasing the number of seats in the House of Commons or shrinking the number of local MPs in order to make room for candidates on party lists. But Professor Lydia Miljan at the University of Windsor says that system isn't perfect either.
The point is you want representation. And so you could have a situation where the yellow party wins that riding, but then all the other party votes, which could be 5 or 6 other voters, could be a mixture of all those other different political parties.
Another option is preferential ballot, sometimes called ranked choice, and is often used in party leadership races. In fact, it's a method Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he favors.
I have always been a fan of ranked ballots, where people get to choose first choice, second choice, third choice. I think it forces parties to come together and make a pitch to be the second choice of other voters, and therefore they are less divisive as elections.
Instead of voting for just one person, you rank the candidates in order of preference from most to least. If after the vote no candidate received over 50% of the votes, the person with the fewest amount is eliminated, and their votes are redistributed to the candidate voters ranked second. This continues until one candidate passes 50% and is elected. And Miljan says those that often push for change, like the Liberals did in 2015 when they were the third party, may do so because they may have something to gain.
My question to people usually is, When you want PR, that's a solution to a problem. Well, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Is it that you're not getting true representation, or is it that your political party wants more power and that's their way of getting it?
So, does this whole process sound confusing? Well, you're not alone, and it may be why BC and Ontario both chose not to change their voting system when the question was put to voters. And while holding a referendum might sound like a good way to decide, Pilon says that idea itself may not turn out how people would think.
What we discover is that voters don't really have opinions on voting systems. They don't understand the mechanics of the systems, and why would they? They barely use these systems. Once every couple of years they show up. I mean, why would we expect them to have any strong opinions? The systems are mostly looked after by the parties. It's the parties' interests that are looked after in terms of these institutional rules.
Even if some voters aren't completely interested in changing how they vote, it's a topic that will likely surface every time an election comes round. Canada will continue voting by first past the post for the foreseeable future, but Canadians can still voice their support or their frustration for the parties by casting their vote on Election Day. For Global News, I'm Sean Previl. Thanks for watching Global News. If you're interested in more national and international news, be sure to subscribe to our channel.